Okay, so we're going to do today module 1. This is the short kind of 2 hour. Obviously, we're starting a little bit late, just waiting for more people to come, but they've not arrived, so we shall. So just in terms of ground rules, so it is just a case of making sure, again, you've got that quiet place, that you sort of come prepared, which you have done and on time. So thank you so much for that. Leaving your cameras on just where you can. But obviously, if you've got people behind you, Kirsty and Ola, I completely appreciate you may need to turn it off. Keeping your mic muted, but again, there's only the two of us, so I'm absolutely fine with that. Just allowing each other to contribute. We do ask for no eating, but absolutely drinks and snacks are fine. To be responsive, constructive, and also positive. Links very closely in terms of our wider curriculum, sort of British values. British values is very much something I think embedded. You can't sort of do safeguarding without that essence of British values being embedded in everything that we do. For instance, sort of taking out a few of your KSB. So you've got K4 and S4, which is more around democracy, that sense of involving individuals in decision making, things like that. The rule of law. So it's about following safeguarding legislation, etc. So very much a part of what we do in our job roles anyway. And in the same with really equality and diversity, very much a part of who we are and what we do. So you will see that consistently being sort of embedded throughout our courses. So in terms of today's session learning outcomes, it's about understanding and applying safeguarding legislation, guidance and policy in practice, and then implement safeguarding responsibilities within your own organisation. So in terms of KSBs, these are the KSBs that you'll be working towards in terms of your assignments and whatnot. So you've got knowledge K1, 16, 19, skills you've got 1, 17 and 20, and behaviours B1 and B6. This is all adding up and supporting to your endpoint assessment. So at the end of your 9, 10, 11 months, you will then enter what's called EPA, which is endpoint assessment, which will be for 3 months. This is where then at the end of that endpoint assessment, you will meet with an external assessor who will come in and conduct your final assessment. So that final assessment looks like a professional discussion of 60 minutes. It will also be your portfolio of evidence that you've been building up during the course. So basically everything that's sort of put on bud. You will then put together a presentation. So this presentation will last 25 minutes, and then you will be asked questions and answers given on that presentation, and that will last around 20 minutes. So that will be 45 minutes in total for your endpoint assessment. Any questions? Oh, any questions?
Sorry. Absolutely. Is it one of you who we deliver the presentation to? Because I'm not about presentations. It's not. I mean, Ola would love it, but it's not for me. Or is it someone you don't know? Because that's even worse.
What do you mean I'm going to love it? I ain't going to love it at all.
Ola, you can talk the talk. I can literally evidence it physically.
Look, I stammer a lot, so I won't be the best.
We will absolutely support you with that presentation and help and guide you. We will have practice runs as much as you need. It won't be us, it is the external assessor.
No.
I promise you, Kirsty.
It all goes wrong.
No, I promise you, we are not going to let that happen. You will be absolutely fine. We do so much preparation and work to support you to get to that point. So if we don't feel you are ready for EPA, we don't put you forward for EPA. You know, it's a collective between us all. And you know, please don't worry. There's lots of support and guidance around what that is going to look like. They will give you the set subject, so you'll know what that presentation needs to look like. But yeah, please, honestly, Kirsty, please don't worry. We will help and support you as much as we can. Just to run through a couple of, well, in terms of Bud, before we do key contacts, how are you both doing with Bud? I know we've got some uploads to do for you, Ola, in terms of your assignments that we completed on the visit, and equally your off the job hours. So we're going to get those uploaded. Do we need to book in, Ola? I don't know whether you're with me or... Do we need to book in, Ola, some time to do your off the job hours for this month?
I think it's already been booked for 1 second. 1 second.
Did we book it? I can't remember.
We did book them. Just check.
Let me
That
just
is
check.
next.
How do you know if your hours are mine? Can you check? Are my hours okay or not?
Next week Thursday, I believe.
Next when, darling?
No, next week Thursday, 21st.
25th. Oh, yeah, we have. So we've got catch up and after job. Perfect. So that's all booked in. So that's fine. Let me just check yours, Kirsty. So you just want to know if you're sort of up to date with your off the job?
Yeah.
Sort of on track. Bear with me.
It's a different. So before
Mm.
the other courses that I've done, you would physically log you off the job, do your little debrief, submit it. Whereas this one, you do like a spreadsheet, don't you? Which is
yeah. Have you been uploading that spreadsheet?
I don't know what I've done. I'll be honest, Sarah, I don't know. My bud's not letting me in at the minute. One sec.
One of you off the job was signed off.
I'm probably going to have to add a few hours on. It's probably been about a month since I last uploaded hours, but I just wanted to know if I'm like behind.
Yeah, I think you are a little bit.
Okay, so that should I'll work on that. I'm not here tomorrow. I'm going to be at home, so I will work on there's a piece that I need to just write a reflection piece and upload, and I'll do my off the job as well.
Yeah. So use that spreadsheet. If you get stuck tomorrow though, Kirsty, just give me a shout and we can book in half an hour. And again, I can look at, because what we've done with Oliver is basically we've got the spreadsheet generated and now we're just entering onto that spreadsheet and then we can upload it from this side anyway. So yeah, if you need support with that, don't worry, just give me a shout tomorrow. But you want to be looking at on average between 12 and 19 hours a month of off the job. That will keep you on track each month as you do the course.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of key contacts, so we've got Ed Johnson, who is our designated safeguarding officer. So he's our lead here with the quality manager, and he's also a mental health first aider. There's myself, who is the deputy safeguarding officer, the same co-lead, and also mental health first aider. We then have compliance manager, course development, mental health first aider, which is Amy and Charlotte. We've got Joe Morgan, who is our functional skills, Amber Massey, who looks after our complaints, Lindsay Kay, who is our funding lead, and Beth Rhodes, who is our training director. So you've got all the sort of key contacts there with their email if you did need at any point to sort of reach out to anybody. Okay, so let's get straight into what is safeguarding. So basically, working together to safeguard children includes prevention, not just protection. So it includes both children and adults who may have care and sort of support needs. So when we think around that sense of working together to safeguard children, it's very much about, the sort of breakdown of that is protecting children from maltreatment, preventing impairment of children's health or development, looking at ensuring children grow in circumstances consistent with the provision of safe and effective care, and also taking action to enable all children to have the best sort of outcomes. So safeguarding, when we think about it, it's very much about being proactive. Well, it's about both being proactive and reactive. So your proactive is the prevention, your reactive is the protection. We know, again, it sort of applies to both children and vulnerable adults with care and support needs. And again, you've got your Care Act 2014, where that defines your safeguarding duties for adults, again, focusing on protection from abuse, neglect, and promoting well-being. It is always about the rights as well as the safety. So when we think about dignity, voice, and inclusion, and it's also about well-being. So it's about that sense of supporting growth, development, and sort of resilience as well. It is shared responsibility. Safeguarding is everybody's business, not just for designated staff or sort of social workers. Safeguarding, you've got the essence of the wider system of sort of keeping children and adults safe, and then your child protection is more specific sort of processes to respond to when a child is at risk of sort of significant harm. So it's almost that you've probably both heard of it before, that sense of the umbrella, isn't it? Safeguarding is the umbrella, and sort of child protection sort of sits underneath that in sort of that sense. So in terms of your experience and maybe where you both have come from or the houses, do you think safeguarding looks the same for children as it does for adults, or have you both had different experiences, or what's that, what has that kind of looked for you within your sort of roles?
I think realistically it should look the same.
Mhm.
But I think that there's like a lot more investment into children than adults.
Yeah.
I think that, for example, if a child had been making comments such as, I'm feeling really suicidal, I don't want to live anymore, I'm going to hurt myself, they actually hurt themselves, that would be taken a lot more serious than an adult. Like their level of, like they've got to go to the extreme to get any support that they need, but everyone should be safeguarded as a whole. And I think I use that example because obviously I've worked in mental health hospitals and like CPN in the community, and obviously with children. And I think like there's different thresholds when that, for me, it shouldn't really be the case. You know, there's the care homes. My dad's been in a care home before when he was in respite, and the way that even like the manager speaks to like me as a visitor to the home, you just wouldn't get that in a children's home. And yeah, I just think the thresholds are just very different, and the sense of urgency around it, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of agree because I've worked in both in that sense with adults and children, and even just down to if you had a child that come that said they were suicidal, they'd got mental health concerns, but they were drug taking, we'd address all of that.
Yeah.
In terms of where would that sit in threshold, whereas when I worked with the adults, okay, well we can address one, but you need to stop taking the drugs, or we can address the drugs, but it's about the mental health. It's either one or the other. You know what I mean? It's like they don't address you as a whole person and the whole concern. So I completely agree with that. It's sort of a very tricky, and it should. If you're a vulnerable adult, there's frameworks out there, isn't there, for children and vulnerable adults. So they all come. They should, like you say, all have the same sort of scope, but unfortunately they don't. What about you, Ola? Have you ever worked with adults in terms of a safeguarding context, and what's sort of your experience been?
Actually, I've worked with adults. What I believe it should be the same, irrespective of adults or children. Safeguarding of sorry guys, sorry, 1 minute. So I'm in the office and I've got, because I don't have any other office to go into, so unfortunately. You were here last week, so that's the situation. I still hop in there.
Yeah, I've got the keys here.
We'll sort of move on from that then. So in terms of
Hold it down.
in terms of key safeguarding legislation, so here we're not just sort of naming laws, but we're going to link them to basically action. So this is what we're going to see in the next few slides. So it's really that sense of theory, putting it into practice. So, recording concerns, escalating disclosures, and working with others. So we know safeguarding basically isn't optional. It is underpinned by law, and these laws and sort of statutory guidance tell us what we must do, not what we can sort of choose to do. So each piece of legislation translates into practical actions in your everyday sort of roles. So breaking it down a little bit, just in terms of our key sort of framework. So you've got your Children's Act 89 and 2004. So the 1989 Act was very much around the child's welfare is paramount. That was the foundation of sort of safeguarding law. Within that law, you've got your section 17, which is your duty to safeguard children in need. And you also got your section 47, duty to investigate if a child is at risk of significant harm. 2004 Act came in after the death of Victoria Clambier, and this introduced that sense of every child matters. So this placed duty on all agencies to work together to promote welfare. So the practical link in terms of that, so it's almost when you record a concern or sort of escalate a disclosure, you're fulfilling your duty basically under both of these acts. So this is that sense of theory into practice.
So I'm
Ollie,
currently going from the other side.
okay. There
Yeah,
we go.
fine.
So your Care Act 2014 is your vulnerable adult safeguarding. So the first law, this was the first law basically to put adult safeguarding on a sort of statutory footing. Ola, I'm just going to mute you, my love. Oh, I think he's muted already. Yeah. So in terms of principles around this Care Act 2014, you've got things like empowerment, prevention, proportionality, protection, partnership, and accountability. So it applies to adults with care and support needs who are at risk of abuse, neglect, and unable to protect themselves. Now, the reason we add this in and speak a lot around this is obviously a lot of care tech provisions go beyond 18 plus. So this is when you start to bring in that sense of the Care Act and vulnerable adults. So again, if you support a vulnerable adult within that capacity, things like with learning difficulties, again, under that Care Act, you have a legal duty to notice and report any safeguarding concerns. You've then got your Working Together to Safeguard Children, which is a statutory guidance. So this explains how all agencies must work together, things like education, health, police, social care, voluntary sector. Now, this requires you to share information and multi-agency work, and it's got all the safeguarding arrangements in place in terms of, well, thinking around what used to be called a local safeguarding council something. They now change with sort of your safeguarding partnerships. So this is about thinking when you call a designated safeguarding lead or you share information with another professional or a LADO, etc. This guidance is what requires that basically that cooperation as well. You've then got your Human Rights Act 1998 and your UNCRC. Your Human Rights Act, does any of you know the any of the acts under the Human Rights Act? Any of the articles that we work towards? Would you know them?
Equality.
Sorry?
Diversity. Equality and diversity, would that go under it?
It does, but in terms of the articles that I would say that you guys generally more so work to is the right to life, which would be Article 2. Things like freedom from torture and inhumane treatment, which is your Article 3. And then right to privacy in a family life, which is under Article 8. In terms of the UNCRC, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, you also have other articles within that, which I think are really important to note. So you've got your Article 19, which is protection from all forms of abuse. You've got your Article 12, which is the right to be heard, and then the Article 28, which is the right to education. So all these kind of really fit within residential settings. So it would be good to kind of go off and expand on some of those articles. So again, the sort of more practical link to that would be, so when, you know, and it's so big, isn't it, these days, to ensure we've got the child's voice in all of our paperwork, in everything that we do. And this is that practical link to that. So when you ensure that you have that voice and it is listened to in any form of safeguarding process, you guys are then upholding your rights under the UNCRC. So what do you think these laws, having gave a few examples, what do those laws and guidance look like in action for you in your roles? So in terms for you, Kirsty, what does sort of like the Human Rights Act, the UNCRC, how does that sort of play out within your role day to day?
I think that, you know, ultimately the children are safeguarded from their past experiences as soon as they walk through the door, and we have to ensure that all parts of that are embedded in the home. And obviously the child's voice is centre to all of that. You know, there's obviously measures that you have to put in place around managing risk, but the young person remains the key focus. It's about being a corporate parent and, you know, trying to teach them right from wrong and things like that in a safe manner. And sometimes you do have to promote positive risk taking, and that could, that's a balance on what you're like. You need to safeguard them, and you need to listen to their rights, and they've got a right to make a decision and things like that. And sometimes that could be a wrong decision, but at least you can evidence that, you know, we've tried this for them, but we haven't been successful. But if they're never going to learn if we don't try, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to try and balance it, but the children do have to remain at the key of all decisions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Ola, which of these sort of, when you think about what's being displayed in terms of the Children's Act, the Care Act, the working together, which of these do you think you draw on most in sort of your day-to-day work?
He's not there.
Ola, oh,
Can you hear me?
oh yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you. Oh, there we go. Now I can see you, but
Sorry, I'll move down to another room. So
okay. Yeah. So which sort of what you can see on the screen there in terms of the legislation and frameworks, which do you think you draw on most on a day-to-day? Which do you think you kind of use, or yeah?
I think it's more to do with the Children Act. Obviously talking about protection of children at all times. And at the same time, the human rights as well, giving the children the freedom to be able to express themselves without being judged. Does that make sense now? So that's what I'm more drawn into. But obviously, the children, that is very, very important. Taking the welfare of the children, safeguarding them at all times. Just like Kessa has mentioned earlier on, in terms of if the safeguarding concern, how to manage that in terms of if the children is talking about being suicide thought and stuff like that, how you could make sure that you act on it as soon as you can, just support the children in general. So, at the same time, they're working together, which we mentioned last week as well, that we talked about in terms of maybe having those multi-agency to safeguard the children if there's any concern in terms of have to bring other agencies into play, like the social worker, the health, other professionals like the doctor, the GP, the specialists, in terms of having those multi-agency to come together to support the children. And then we do have a lot of examples in terms of when we have children who does goes missing regularly from Stafford Radio, whereby we have this strategic meeting for them, including social worker, the police, and stuff like that. So those are the more things that are actually drawn to me, looking at the about the Care Act for the adults. Obviously, I don't work with adults, but I do have a bit of knowledge about that. But the working together and the children and the human rights are the most important. That actually drawn up to me amongst this legislation.
I think like physically in the home, the Children's Act is very, very important, and obviously protecting their rights, that just comes as standard. The working together is so vital, especially when it comes to safeguarding, particularly when it comes to safeguarding, because when you put all your information together and you've got external links like police or whatever, the curiosity can expand, and from your curiosity you can, some of the things that I found out through just using curiosity with the kids and being, you know, having those conversations with them, and they've let something slip and they don't even know how significant that was, to piece things together with like police and whatever else. But like working together, it can be difficult as well, because I've got a situation right now, and you know, there was an incident with one of my children, and the psychiatrist from CAMS is saying, no, she's not doing this, this and this. Well, actually, you don't really know my child that well. You're not with her day to day. And there's things that I need to keep in place for her well-being that this is going to affect. So working together, but also being able to challenge and put your point across, because you are the one in here capturing the child's voice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that it can get a bit of a grey area at that time, but this is where we talk about the positive risk taking and things like that. You know, we've got to consider the children and what's best for them. And sometimes it is a bit risky. It is risky, but everything that we do, taking a child in the home is a risk. Do you know what I mean? Everything that we do as part of our role has risks, unfortunately. But there is two sides of the working together that I've experienced anyway. And I'm sure, Ola, I know your experiences too. I'm sure you've had that as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I think it's a tough one, isn't it, working together? Because, and like you said, you know, you guys are on the ground, you've got that child with you, you're acting in, you know, parental loci, you know, you are their guardians, their parent, everything wrapped into one. You know, you are going to capture things that they say that are not necessarily they'll talk to somebody sat there in a suit, you know, that they're at home, aren't they, with you guys? And I think, yeah, it's hard
And
sometimes
even
to
that, you know,
convey that.
like, so for example, I've got a 9-year-old now, and her presentation, even from when she came, her paperwork before she came in, like we're very much anticipating a disclosure from when she was younger.
Yeah.
And even that process, like, I know it's a process and it's part of safeguarding, but a child tells you some really significant traumatic information that's happened to them. They've made this disclosure, and like, and then they're like, the police are coming now, aren't they? Like, then it shouldn't. I know it's process, but for them at that time, they haven't even processed that they've shared this in. Like, I've literally just let this huge secret out, and now the police are going to come here and ask me to do it on a video interview and sit in a room with the people that I don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do think that certain things, part of the safeguarding process, need to be adapted for children who have had really traumatic experience. It's not nice for them to sit in a room with a stranger and have that interview. Yeah, I just, some things we could sit here all day and pick things about that, you know, that we'd like changing and whatever else, but
no, absolutely.
Just going back to the part of knowing your child and knowing what's best for them, and I think even that, like, there's been times when I've had to say, like, look, you're not coming. Like, I know it's part of your role, and this is the process, and I've captured their voice. I've sent it to you. This is what they've said. I know you've got procedures to follow, but just give us some time, because she needs to process it herself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, definitely. I think they aren't abstract, are they? Sort of safeguarding laws and guidance. They're not abstract. You know, they do sort of translate directly into actions. And for us, you know, it's difficult to sort of know where to go. But in terms of that, it is just a case of what we need to be doing is noticing those concerns, recording accurately, escalating as quickly as we possibly can in a way, you know, to protect them from any sort of risk, and you know, effectively work with sort of other agencies. I think for me, you know, following the law is not only a professional duty that we know we have to do and should do, but it is about all the time, isn't it? That momentum of keeping children, young people, and everybody safe, and even us as practitioners, you know, we have to keep ourselves safe in that, don't we? So this is just breaking it down a little bit more in terms of what we've just spoken about. So you've got law, national policy, local procedure, and then into your sort of everyday practice. So your law is where your sort of legal duties sit. You've got your children's actually care right, you're working together. Your national policy, you're almost then your government expectations. So keeping children safe in education, etc., working together. You've got your local procedures then, which is your safeguarding boards, your employer, and your personal setting, you know, care tech that have written then into, you know, these kind of policies into your own sort of procedures. Then you've got your practice. So then this is you guys then putting it into your sort of day-to-day action. So recording your concerns, etc. So when you follow procedure, you're not just ticking a box, you are carrying out law in practice. So it's basically following procedures, you're going to stay compliant and keep people safe. And this then protects you legally and also professionally as well. Have you, well, I'm absolutely sort of convinced that you sort of have, but have you ever had to sort of challenge practice that didn't follow policy? Can you think of times where you've challenged particular practice that wasn't being followed, that, you know, that didn't follow your own sort of policy?
I've challenged practice, both staff, externally, law, and I think, like, you have to, like, I've had incidents where you know, staff haven't followed safeguarding procedures, but you've got to reflect on your own practice as well. Okay, they didn't follow it. Why is that? You know, do I need to make something that's clearer for them? I created a flowchart for them, literally a dummy guide. Anyone can understand it. A lot of the policies and procedures, I said this to you when you came out, they're made for, it's not just for my role, it's my manager's role, and my manager's above that, the whole company's role, matter of fact. it's not tailored to your RCWs who are out there on the shop floor with the kids. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is expected of them? Let's break it down so it's so simple that they can't get it wrong. But then I've also had to challenge the police. You know, we contact the police for support, and support doesn't look like abuse towards my child, and having to challenge that, yeah, it's difficult and the outcome isn't what I wanted it to be, you know, but I've still done it. I've still done it because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely. What about yourself, Ola? When have you sort of noticed where you've challenged practice that didn't necessarily follow procedure?
Obviously, I do challenge staff in terms of safeguarding if there's any other concerns around the house, in terms of making sure they monitor the children. Then I can raise that with them, have a discussion with them on a one-to-one. And if there's anything higher level, I can refer to the HR. However, in terms of external, we've had some strategy meeting with police and the kind of let's say just an example for a young person that I used to have here, whereby it was initially he has a safeguarding concern on him, like an allegation was made on this young person, and they moved to my service here. And then while he was with us here, he has like a curfew, like not like a curfew, whereby it's not to be allowed to be left alone with children. Does that make sense now? Any children under the age of 16. So that means there should be an adult present at all times. And that was put in place by the police, right? And then at the long run, this young person goes missing. And then we call the police to tell them, well, he's gone missing. So there's a potential whereby it could be with another child, which is under 16. Does that make sense now? And then the police will say, no, well, it's not possible. Only if you have an evidence that he is with somebody, then we can call. But we told them, I challenge to say, you are the one that put this bail condition in place. Why are you not telling us now that? So we had that back and forth with the police because you are the one that put this safeguarding concern on this young person that he cannot be left with another child. Obviously, in the house here, we have adults that will be around this young person at all times. But when he leaves the home, there's a chance if he goes outside, because he's 16 at the time, he could be mingle with other young people, and then we call into a reporting meeting, and then there will be a back and forth with the police. So I do challenge them and have evidence of this. So I think that's the only time that I actually challenge. I mean, like most agencies or police in terms of safeguarding concern, to my understanding, as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of inside the house, whereby any safeguarding concern has been raised, I kind of manage it within the service, whereby within our policy, within Cambia around safeguarding.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got like your policies, your pathways internal that you that you guys kind of follow. But no, that's a really good example of sort of escalating and challenging almost that, outside of what that policy looks like. I think when we think about why does all this matter, it is about, it keeps children, it keeps young people, and it ensures then, that sort of no concern is then missed. We escalate, we challenge outside of that sometimes, don't we? It keeps also you guys safe legally. So if you are following procedure, you are following your policy, you are protected professionally if something goes wrong. And then with that, it also keeps the organisation accountable. So things like your inspections, and they will look at whether practice is reflecting your law and sort of policy. In terms of acting, and I always say, that kind of golden rule, if in doubt, don't guess, don't sit on it, just escalate it, and challenge it, sort of professionally challenge. We have to make sure, mistakes happen. When staff sort of assume it's either probably nothing or somebody else is dealing with it, so we have to lead with that kind of exemplary sort of role model in terms of, we need to be escalating. Law basically shapes everything that we must do. Policy explains how it should be done nationally. Procedures then break it down locally, and the practice is you following those procedures basically every single time. In terms of, your local safeguarding policies, we've touched on it a little bit, but every organisation is required to have a safeguarding policy. It sort of translates what we've just spoken about, your national law and your guidance. these policies also kind of bridge between you working together, you keeping children safe, your Care Act, and sort of your everyday sort of practice. So what I would say, your key message here is if you don't know your policy or some of your policies, because the hefty documents aren't there to sort of sit and read through word for word, but you do risk sort of missing steps then that protect both the individual and yourself sort of professionally. So in terms of policies, it's about reporting concerns. It's about the escalation process. It's about recording, the allegations management as well. And equally, it explains what that sort of role looks like for you guys as DSLs as well. Policies reflect law, but they are tailored to the type of organisation. And so I'm sort of guessing CareTech have your kind of policies at a level what covers, like I think you just said there, Kirsty, in terms of everything. But do you guys have your own adapted policies within your actual setting for your local safeguarding board? Do you take aspects of that and adapt them, or are all your policies just kind of sat at one level with CareTech?
I personally have adapted, and it's not really adapted as in I've changed anything. I've just made it user friendly for the people in the home that are going to need it. In terms of my own, like that's already embedded. Do you know what I mean? But when you have a staff team that, you know, some people have an ever-changing staff team. Me and Ola are quite lucky. We've got long-standing staff. But there was a period of time when I first joined the home where the staff weren't aware of safeguarding, and there was issues around safeguarding where you know, investigations had to take place, and there was quite a number of them. So it got to a point of, okay, what can I do? I'm not the one making the mistakes, but what can I do? Which is why I created the flowchart that I did. And to be honest, I'm touching every single thing since that point. I think we've had one investigation around staff not following safeguarding procedures after disclosure, which is significantly less than before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sort of within your policies, do you, for sort of your more localized policies then that you go and adapt, do you think about sort of the community needs as well and what's out there, things like your urban versus rural, your sort of high deprivation areas, potentially cultural demographics as well? Are they all encompassed?
We consider that in as part of our safe area reports.
Okay, yeah.
So we have personalised, like Ola will have to do one, I do one for my home, for his home and my home, but where I'm positioned, unfortunately, I'm like on the border of like 3 boroughs.
Wow, okay.
So I have to consider, because of like the bus routes and things like that, I have to consider all 3. There's significantly higher risks in the Birmingham side in relation to like the Dudley and Sandwell. So I do have to consider a number of them and have links in with my local sergeant about the concerns in the area, because there is a lot of CSE, CCE, and it's not where the home is. The home's we're really lucky. We're in a beautiful location. We've got a lovely road, but unfortunately, where the home's positioned, we've got bus stops either end of the road, and the buses going towards Birmingham are taking children to places of risk. So I have to consider quite a lot within mine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what about yourself, Ola?
Yeah, obviously, I need to adapt just like what Chris has mentioned, adapt the safe area report, which is location risk assessment around my area here to the home in terms of the hotspot, thinking about the hotspot around the local area where you need to kind of, let's say, as a message from care, just know where to go to straight away because of the concerns around the local area. We do have like a canal not far from the home now. That has to be in my safe area report as well. And any other information from the police as well, because we do have visits from the police coming to the house to give us any information. So if there's anything happening in the local area that we're aware of, we add that information into the risk assessment in terms of location risk assessment, and then we work alongside that. So that's why we tend to review and review, like I said, review and update the location risk assessment to be able to like kind of cover your area, whereby when offset comes in, you know that these are the things that we have identified within a local area whereby you need to be aware of. So that's how we tend to kind of manage in terms of my location here. In terms of safeguarding, like what Casey has said, we haven't had whereby we investigate staff. Obviously, it has reduced, and then we didn't really have a lot of investigation around staffing in terms of how the children are being managed whereby a racist safeguarding concern.
Yeah.
But if it does go to that level, we have a protocol to follow whereby we have to contact HR, and then we have followed the investigation whereby it led us basically. And we learn from it. The main thing is about learning from any safeguarding concern and then making sure it never repeats itself again. That's the main thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what inspectors look for as well, the learning that comes from anything, because we're all here trying to do the very best, but equally we do get things wrong, you know, and we have to put our hands up to that and say, do you know what, yeah, we did get that wrong, or we didn't do that, but this is what now we've put in place. And this is where your localized adapted policies really help, because then they can see that you are adapting it to your setting, to your localized area, you know, and encompassing all of those lessons learned, because what could be a lesson learned for Kirsty's home may not apply to your home, Ola. So it's about bringing those lessons learned to what suits and fits into your sort of setting. I mean, we also have to think around online safety, radicalization, you know, all of that type of thing as well, especially more so for residential, because they're in the homes, aren't they? They may be somewhat less restricted a little bit sometimes, depending on the nature of why they've come into the area or sort of what's going on, to have that freedom to get out, you know, so they do tend to spend more time. I know things are monitored, you know, a lot of the homes that I've worked in and spoke to, there were, you know, protective factors in place. But again, we don't protect them from everything, because then we'd be locking them away in a padded cell, and we can't do that. You know what I mean? So there's still always, like Kirsty said, there's risks. Oh, I think it was Kirsty or yourself, Ola. There's risks with everything. There's risks as soon as we bring a young person into the home. So, you know, it's just about, like you said, recognizing those lessons learned and putting in and adapting, you know, sort of any changes that we sort of need to. And that's why we emphasize on needing to know your own policy, because it is going to be specific to you and your context. Because again, what's sort of going on within one area won't be going on within another. So, you know, it's just making sure, you know, they're accessible. Are all your policies stored physically or digitally? How do people get access to?
Both.
Okay, that's
because
really
what happens
good.
is that sometimes what happens is that the policy gets to change, and then printing at all time, but we can just signpost the staff member to say we have a platform whereby we have just to remind me again, Cambion Point, whereby we have all the policies online, whereby the children where the staff can read. But there are some ones that are printed out, but printing it every now and then, just signpost the staff to go and read it from there, and then you track it that it's being read.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of stretch beyond that then, what sort of things do you think, what differences do you think would exist between sort of your policy, Kirsty, and your policy, Ella? What, just based on your setting, based on the context, the young people that you have?
Yeah.
What difference do you feel could potentially exist?
I've had to, my setting had been very different to Ola's before. I was mental health setting, like specialist mental health complex needs. And I had to consider things like, which Ola probably considers as well, but mine's in a different level of risk. So like train stations, bridges. I've got the M5, 2 bridges either end of the road. I've had incidents with children on bridges, so then I've had to adapt my safe area report to consider that. I've then had to adapt that when it comes to matching into the home. It would be so silly of me to take a child that's got risks around bridges. I think that Ola has predominantly had males. So he might not have had to consider, obviously he has to touch on it, but he wouldn't have to consider as much around the CSE that I've had to, because of experiences I've had in the home. I think Ola would have to consider more gang-related activity where he's based, and that's not immediate, but like behind where he's based, like Bushbury, Scotland, all those areas. But then you've also got like Whitmarines.
Yeah, Whitmarines, yeah.
And I've touched on that in mine, but I've never had to. I've had males in here, but it's never been an identified immediate risk to my home. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas some of the boys that Ola's had in the home have had risky characters, links to them in the community around the home, and he's had to consider that. So I'd say I'd probably use those as examples. But again, going back to it's what you're exposed to. And yeah, we didn't have it in place at the time, but now that's happened. What's the learning from that and amending your risk assessments around that? It's constantly reviewing and amending.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ola, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, just to echo what she has mentioned as well, in terms of my local area here, I'm thinking about the train station actually, and also think about a child with high risk of missing from care, because that has been a kind of a letdown a little bit for the past couple, I'll say a while ago, whereby a child goes missing and then they jump on a train, because the train station is just literally about 10 minutes, I would say 15-minute walk. It depends on how fast the children can walk. So 10 to 15 minutes walk is a train station there, boom, they jump. But we have a child that has gone from here all the way to London, all the way to further afield from here.
Wow.
So I have to think about that when I have a referral. Obviously, my home is slightly different to Kirsty. It was just about EBD, emotional behavior. However, a child with high risk of missing from care, I need to think twice before I take that into consideration about the influence of that child with the children here. The last thing we want is having a child that goes missing and then take along the other children, and then we have like 4 children going missing at the same time. So I have to take that into consideration when I'm doing my referrals and looking at the risk around the children. So I think that's more of a key to me, making sure that because there's a bus stop right in front of the home, a child that goes missing just get into the bus and just go like that.
Yeah.
So I have to
and that literally is right in front of the home, isn't it? When I remember coming, it's literally outside your door, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So I have to take that into consideration whenever I have a referrals about thinking about risk assessment within the local area. I need any children that's been referred to me. So it's a lesson I've learned from the previous inspection. I have to think at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic stuff. So with policies then, I think, and sort of looking at what we've just explored, safeguarding in terms of policies, procedures, etc. Safeguarding is only as effective if staff know and follow your procedure, isn't it? You're localized, that understand sort of what's going on within your area. So it's sort of not just knowing what safeguarding is in theory, but it's knowing who, what, where, when, and how within your sort of setting, and constantly sort of reviewing those, in training, in meetings, etc. And what I used to do within a lot of my training, I would take snippets from legislation. I think we spoke about this actually, Ola, didn't we, in terms of what you could do to support, more framework understanding.
Yes.
But it's going into meetings and pulling out certain aspects of legislation and framework and like bite-sized learning when it comes to that. It's really, really effective just to really embed that sense of this is why we do what we do. And it's that theory of putting all of that law, etc., into practice. And it just kind of helps sometimes bring things alive a little bit. So in terms of your setting, I mean, we've kind of explored in terms of what safeguarding means to us, but can you give examples of sort of when you've really seen safeguarding done well? Just give me an example of sort of, only a short example, just because I'm conscious of time, but when you've really seen safeguarding, kind of seen it through that process, when you think that was collectively, collaboratively, we're all working together, we've got the child's voice, and sort of seen that process through. Have you got any examples?
I mean, I do have an example whereby a child who has been an allegation, I think, sometime last year, and I have to take that serious. Obviously, when a child has said something, I have to kind of follow it up. And then the police were involved, and then they actually came into the building to have a kind of discussion with the child, and the staff member that is, thank you. Tracy brought me a nice coffee.
Yeah.
Say hello. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Tracy. You're looking after him well.
Yeah. I'm after a pay rise.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I actually locked myself up in one of the sleep rooms. So I left the office to come in here.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's where I am. So she said, you know what, let me give me a nice coffee. So like I said, so when we do have like a professionals meeting, like a track meeting with all Lado involved and police were involved, other professionals, the school were involved. I think we have I think like 1 or 2 or 3 meetings whereby we discuss the child itself in particular, and then the staff is any history of being abusive towards the children and stuff like that. So we had that meeting, and it was a kind of massive meeting, which and also we bring the voice of the child into the meeting as well, to kind of understand what he has said. Does that make sense? Now, to like to see the premises of what he has said. So in terms of having different voices talking about the incident and stuff like that, we'll manage to be able to safeguard the child and also safeguard the staff member as well. Does that make sense now? Because they also have their own version of what has happened, basically, because they are being hurt by the child. The child also said he's being hurt by what the staff member have done to them, basically. So you have to take both sides into consideration. And then we are able to come together with a resolution that's actually favorable to both parties. And then we discuss with the child the outcome of the meeting and the safeguarding meeting that we have with the local authority, Lado and police. And the child was kind of understand the reason why the decision that was made. So I think having that discussion and reassuring the child that we're taking what he has said into consideration actually helped a lot. And then we brought his voice into the meeting and then gave him the feedback, and which is satisfied about it. And the staff member also was satisfied with the outcome of the kind of a strategy meeting with the professionals, and then the outcome for me to action for the staff member, which I did after us. So I think that actually worked well in terms of, I think it's still very much fresh in my mind. That's why I kind of refer to. There are many other instances, but that one actually jumped up to my head straight away when you mentioned about how safeguarding is being done well.
Yeah, absolutely. So good sort of multi-agency work in there, isn't it? All sort of sat around that table exploring. Was there any sort of advocacy used for the young person in that?
Yeah, it was. The advocate actually joined the meeting as well. Advocate joined the meeting as well. We had the social work, we had the police, we had people from the school. We had Lado in the meeting as well. We had my regional manager in the meeting. So so we take all those everybody's kind of opinion into consideration and to reach a favorable outcome for both the child and the staff as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Kirsty, what about you? You're on mute, my love.
I've had some good ones, but I've also had like, when you don't get to see the end.
Yeah.
Because it takes so long. Like a lot of mine have been disclosures and things like that. So, managing them, supporting the child through that process. But then, a lot of my children have been really high level, to be fair. And like say, if they've got risks of CSE, they haven't been able to stay around here. Like they've, and that's the right thing for them in that time. But then you don't get to follow it through.
Yeah.
One of my young
what's the impact? Sorry, Kirsty, just before we move on, what's the impact of that on you? Because that must be quite a heavy to continually keep carrying, that they come in, they have these disclosures, they then moved on, but you've started forming a therapeutic, a professional, but a relationship with that young person. What's the impact on you?
It's difficult, and I don't really. So when children move on from here, I still like to go and visit them. I still like to keep that connection. I still keep in touch, whether it's a text once a year or whatever it is, just to see how they are. But it is a lot to take on without. I mean, one of the ones that I have, there was one when she moved on, but when she was with me, so it's in the paper and everything. She'd got on a bus and she was being exploited by a police officer, and she got on this bus with the police officer. He was in plain clothing, and he flashed a badge to get on the bus for free, and then he was sat at the bus with her on the bus with her in her school uniform, and he was kissing her and whatever else, and the bus driver reported it. If he hadn't reported it, no one would ever know. And they basically removed her from her parents. She came into care because of the neglect side there, and there was plans for him to abduct her. And it was literally like the week before that the bus driver had said that and intercepted it all. There was messages between him and this other man about how they were going to abduct her and take her elsewhere, and that the family wouldn't be bothered because they don't bother with her. And he'd basically controlled her and got her to go to the police with him as a police officer acting as a family member to report her own mother. Which is how she ended up going into care. But obviously all his plot had been get her into care, she's vulnerable, it's easier to, you know, take her at that point, get her away. And we supported her. That was a long process. Like, she was with me for about 12 months, and before she left we supported her to attend court to give evidence. And she, you know, that was a lot of preparation for that. She didn't want to do it. She was still very much of the mindset like, no, I'm in love, he loves me, this isn't the right thing to do. And she turned up there and she went to give evidence, and then he changed his plea to guilty, and obviously she didn't have to give evidence then, and we supported her through that. But there was other things that she raised when she was with us, and we didn't see the end of that. But that's probably the only time I've ever supported like the whole start to finish of serious safeguarding.
My gosh.
It is frustrating when you don't get to see the end. Like, you've put all that effort in to raise those concerns, and then what is the outcome of that? But you do it. I'd still do it all again, because that's
what we do, isn't it? That's what we do. We just keep on doing it. But no, and I think that's a, you know, really sort of good, again, a good example of, you know, that sort of working together. But, you know, you were really working with that young person, you know, weren't you, for sort of that sense of sort of 12 months. And it's just crazy, isn't it? The mastermind that almost goes behind some of these, you know, like to continue with that young person to get to the point where their planning was that they were going to get her into care and take her to the police and do this, you know, that's a lot of thought, isn't it? It's a lot of process that goes into but it's how they do it, isn't it? It's how they groom these young people and you know, work with them. So in terms of key roles in safeguarding, so we know what sort of our roles look like in terms of safeguarding lead, but I suppose this is just to look at, you know, safeguarding as a system. It's not a solo job. So it does not sit with one person's sort of shoulders or sit on one person's shoulders, sort of say. It is a multi-layered system of roles, but each have within that sort of defined responsibilities. So it's about, you know, some of our role is not that we're not expected to be the investigator or solve the safeguarding case, but we are part of a much wider sort of safeguarding team, you know, that kind of supports that. So when we think about the DSL, so these, sorry, are the sort of more main point of contact for safeguarding within your setting. So do you two sit with that title? You are the DSL within your settings? Yeah. So you guys are generally normally trained to a much sort of higher level. You're responsible for taking in those reports, assessing sort of next steps. And then more so, you guys will have that direct contact with the external agencies. But that's not to say your staff on duty don't, but it generally sort of comes down to sort of you guys. Just going to mute some background noise. So in terms of then, generally that does sit as well within your settings with the registered manager. You've got your line manager then. So these are normally support staff in sort of recognising concerns, following procedures, etc. Your line managers tend to ensure that your staff are trained, supervised and feel confident to raise issues. They sometimes can act as a deputy DSL as well, depending on the organisation. You've then got your LADO. These are specific, as you know, to sort of managing your allegations against adults who work with children. If a concern's raised about staff behaviour, it's the LADO that generally ensures it's sort of that fair and thorough sort of process. And then your external partners that make up your social workers, your police, your health professionals, and your other partners as well. Could be youth justice, voluntary sector, probation, CAMS, drug and alcohol service. You know, you've got different types of other external partners as well. But I think our role is very much about that sense of notice, record and report, isn't it? Escalate where we need and sort of stay within our scope of our role. Because it is about being the eyes and ears, isn't it, within our setting, you know, and sort of passing on that information as quickly as we can. So I think when we can look at this, it's a sense of safeguarding is teamwork. You know, each role has boundaries equally and also responsibilities. And I think for us, it's following our role. By doing it and by following it, we are protecting them, both the people that we support, but again, you as a professional and sort of the organisation as well. So understanding our responsibilities, just breaking down this a little bit more in terms of being that DSL. So you have, you know, safeguarding it is about following a process, but the process is there to protect children, young people, and vulnerable adults. So you've got your step one, you've got your identifying concerns. This could be something you see, something you hear, or something you notice. But it's about, if it makes you feel uneasy, then it's a concern worth sort of recording. And I always used to kind of say, go with that sort of gut. Your gut is normally telling you if there's something that doesn't feel right. It generally isn't. I've always worked from that. How do you guys sort of personally notice when something just doesn't quite feel right? Do you kind of get that sense of just, oh yeah, something just generally here is not fitting? Where do you kind of sense that from? How do you sort of notice it?
I know my kids. I think if you know your children, you just know.
How do you get to know them, Kirsty? Do you then sort of make a point of, I mean, I know they're in the home, so I don't want that to sound like a silly question, but when they first arrive, they don't know you. You don't know them. So what's the process in getting to know them so you feel comfortable in saying, I know my kids?
I think that me and Ola, to be honest, we're not like sitting the office managers. Yes, we very much have a lot of work to do, and I do spend a lot of time in that, but I've still got a relationship with my children. I'm out there with them, I take them out when I can, I plan days out with them, I give them one-to-one time, and that's from the beginning. Very much they know that, you know, Kirsty's the boss, she makes all the decisions, Kirsty gets all the blame. That's fine, that's absolutely fine, that is what it is. But at the same time, just because I'm the person that you believe makes all the decisions about your life, even though I'm definitely not, we can still have a relationship. And I can't explain to you how I know. I know with my own children, I know with the children. Like yesterday, I knew that one of my children was going to go missing, and I went and sat outside the house where she was going to go, and lo and behold, she turned up there. I just know. I don't know how to explain that feeling to you, Sarah, but I just know.
Yeah. What about you, Ola? Where does it sort of come from you? Or again, very similar, you just sort of know when you know, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You sort of know when you know, obviously. And sometimes you if a child is being, let's say, exploits outside of the home, or there is a concern within the group in the house, you tend to know if there's any concern around. And because you work with children for quite, I mean, you will spend more time with them basically, and then you know if there's any concern with the child. And sometimes if the child is being withdrawn, you sense something is going on. Does that make sense now? And then if the child makes any comments, anything, just try and don't try to just shy it away. Try to look into it and understand the child where it's coming from and reassure the child. The reassurance is the most important thing for me as well. If the child make a comment about stuff, we discuss it and provide some reassurance to the child to say, we're going to take what you say is serious. I'm going to look into it. So you sort of know if there's any concern with the child. And I mean, touch wood, currently we have the children here whereby they haven't had any, like, let's say, kind of exploitation of the home or any kind of massive concern that I want to think about. But if it does happen, you will know your child. And as you know, I think last week when we came here, we saw a young person that we are a girl, which we have currently, and is more into social media, trying to chat up people online and stuff like that. And was it over the weekend? She had a missing from care, whereby she ended up meeting up with one of the friends that she chat up with on social media, because we haven't seen this girl before. And then when she left the home, just after she returned from family contact on Sunday, she ran off the home, staff followed, and then she ended up meeting up with a girl, like almost 16, 15-year-old girl at the Wolverhampton train station. And nobody's aware about this girl before. So they must have been chatting up on social media and stuff like that. But touch wood, nothing happened, and she came back home safely with the support of the police anyway. So, and then we've had a discussion with her to say how we're going to keep her. And then today, we've had a lot of conversation with her in terms of how she's going to keep herself safe. She did a lot of exercise, because children will take a risk. It's just how we're going to manage it, basically, because she's going to be 16 very, very soon. And then she wants to have that freedom to be able to go out and mingle with people. Just how we're going to do it for her safely. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And then she's doing a lot of online safety work, a lot of conversation with myself, with Tracy, with Raj, and stuff like that, to see how you're going to keep yourself safe when you leave the home. Internet safety, just have to put a lot of support work around with this child. Yeah. And I think when after they come in, they will see the music on care and see the kind of work we've done with the child, and what she has also said about keeping herself safe, just about making sure she's aware about the concerns out there if she does leave the house. Yeah,
absolutely. So even just in one aspect of our understanding our responsibilities, how much kind of came from that, when you know, I just went and sat outside and they were there, all of that process that you've just spoke about, and that's just a very small part of what a full process can look like within our role. That's just identifying, and that can take up, can't it, when you think about it, so much of our time, just in terms of identifying and looking for it. Then you've got the recording aspect of all the details as well. And then that's like when you spend a lot of the time in the office, isn't it? Because a lot of the time it's typing up notes, it's making sure that everything is accurate and we've got that timeline of events and we've got that chronology in place and ready.
We all need one of those machines that the lady had that come out and just sit it here. You know what I'm on about, don't you? I said to you, that would save me hours and hours of time.
Invest in a DVR, honestly, they are the best
DVR,
thing.
Okay, that's what it's
DVR,
called.
they're on Amazon, they're next to nothing. You just speak into it and it just pulls everything off and you have a full report. You can tell it how you want it laid out on chat as well, and it will put it straight into a chronology for you. They are fantastic. Anyway, we do DV8. So then you've got your reporting. So then you're going to sit on the phone for hours and escalate it and report it and refer it on. So in terms of, we've got to make sure we are recording as soon as possible, reporting as soon as possible, using the person's own words. It's all about being factual. Then, like I said, we report it, social services, escalate it, social worker, etc. And if we are not in that place of a DSL at that point, this process comes to you via one of your workers. So they then report to you and you decide whether it's kind of in that position, whether we need to pass it on, whether we need to escalate. So you've got it sort of from both positions, in terms of you've got your responsibility as a DSL, but a responsibility as a DSL receiving that information as well, in terms of chasing it up. So why does that sense then of consistency with what we do really matter? Because even the small logs are going to reveal or potentially reveal patterns when combined with other reports. So other reports being multi-agency, and it's that piece to the puzzle, isn't it? We all carry something. Because one late report, one late pickup could be multiple reports, could equal neglect concerns as well. Things about to kind of avoid: not recording minor issues, delaying reporting, investigating it yourself. Sometimes when we sit and we question children, we have to sort of check in, is this our responsibility? Is this something that we should be doing, or is this a police matter? We can sometimes get too, okay, well, we need to know. Promising confidentiality as well. Sometimes I'm still seeing that happen within homes that I'm going into. So it's about making sure that we don't, when we are explaining consistently to young people that there is that opportunity, you know, there is that chance that we may need to sort of share this. Any sort of...
Sorry, I'll be back.
All right, my love. All right. So safeguarding basically is a process. It's not personal judgment. We notice, we record, we report externally, etc. We monitor. So consistency, basically, and accuracy are what keep children and vulnerable adults safe. And equally, although, like we've said, they protect you legally and also professionally as well, don't they? So, so when we think around multi-agency working, you know, multi-agency working is essential. There's no single agency that can fully protect a child alone. And this is why safeguarding is, you know, everybody's sort of responsibility. And I'm sure, you know, even within your role, Ollie, you've been a part many times now, sort of multi-agency planning and reviewing. What other kind of things do you think when it comes, Ola, to sitting in a team and a multi-agency team around a table? What do you think really works well from multi-agency working? And what do you sort of pick up in terms of the pitfalls that don't necessarily work that great?
I think it's about sharing ideas, and when it comes to multi-agency, it's about identifying where the concerns is, number one, and then putting brains together, sharing ideas, and see how we can come together to support the child or to safeguard the child in question. So identifying the problem and then putting plans together, and then the school. Let's say we have the school. The school will talk about how they have known the child, how well he's doing in school. If there's any concern, but in school already, the school will bring that into the meeting. Myself, I'll talk about the child, how he or she been doing on home, any concerns being raised. The police will look at the record of any concern. The GP will come in as any concern. So you just have that multi-agency discussion about the child. I think sometimes I do enjoy it, having this sort of professionals with me on the video call, and then we discuss and dialogue about the child. I get a lot having been in those conversations, because you never know, because you learn a lot from hearing from other people. That's how I learn anyways. So I learn a lot about and then pick some few things. And then we have someone from the let's say from the NHS joining meeting as well. I mean, the nurses and stuff like that. Just about coming together to find a resolution to the concerns and think about the child, which is the central of while we're discussing, while we're meeting together, basically. And then if I need to do something, if the GP needs to do something, the police need to put some actions in place, and we drop an action plan, how we're going to support this concern moving forward and keep the child safe. So I think that's just, for me, I like multi-agency a lot. And having those people come into the meeting, I think, is very important to safeguard the child, if it is need to have those multi-agency conversations here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because by having everybody, isn't it, like different agencies, as we've said, they all hold different pieces of the puzzle of information. You know, for instance, a teacher might notice frequent absences, a GP may see repeated injuries in a particular area, police might have reports of sort of antisocial behaviour, and together then you've got a real sort of full picture, haven't you, of sort of the risks that start to emerge for that sort of young person. It's when agencies don't talk that children start to fall through the cracks, isn't it? And when they do, you know, the risks, you know, we hope then that the risks are sort of spotted early. But I think why I always say the 4 Ds of sort of poor collaboration when we think about multi-agency working, there's one of them is delay. So talking, you know, if we're not talking enough, we're delaying in sort of reporting, taking too long to share or kind of act. Duplication, I think, is another big one, Ollie, you know, repeating work instead of coordinating it. So we end up duplicating on work rather than actually somebody taking onerous and that responsibility and coordinating it. I think disagreement, we see that a lot across the table, which is always going to be inevitable. You know, it always happens. But I think, you know, it can really show that sense of poor collaboration. I think it's just about allowing everybody to have their say. And then saying, okay, well, we have this information. Let's really look at then how we can get this to work. There's no point keep disagreeing on how this is going to work, because we're all working with that individual. But again, you can see it a lot. And then disconnection. I think part of the D's is you know, people working in silo and not sharing sort of critical sort of information as well. I think you can sort of start to see, you know, when you think about Baby P and Victoria Clambier and you know, the series case reviews, there was a real the what came out of those was delay in communication. You know, so you know, delay for me is probably one of the biggest out of those 4Ds. You know, where we start to see, you know, series case reviews come to sort of fruition. You know, information sharing, it is a part of our duty. It's part of those frameworks, you know, it's not a choice. We do have the sort of 7 golden rules of information sharing under the HM Government 2018, in terms of documented. So you've got one of those rules is kind of your GDPR, your data protection is not a barrier to sharing information. Another golden rule is always be open and honest. It's about seeking advice if unsure. It's about sharing with consent where appropriate, but we can share without consent if obviously if we know there's a risk of harm. It's considering safety and well-being. It's ensuring information is shared accurately, necessary and proportionate and timely. And then it's about keeping a record of what you shared and why. So they are our sort of 7 golden rules under the HM Government 2018. So you've got some sort of examples. You've got your strap meetings, case conferences. So this is where your professionals share evidence and agree. You've got your section 47, which I'm sure you guys attend, you know, led by social care. Your multi-agency safeguarding hubs, you know, your local hubs where agencies sort of share. What sort of barriers do you guys see to good information sharing within your particular role? What are some of the barriers?
I think that sometimes our communication could be on point, but social care has been difficult at times. Having the support to escalate, that's a key one for one of my recent ones. You know, my communication has been very thorough. My manager hasn't picked up on that and started escalating appropriately, which has then led to further safeguarding.
Yeah.
I think that with health, I'll give an example before and I can't even remember it. I can't remember my example. I think with health, particularly mental health, I've supported children to hospital, like A&E, and they're like, oh, you know, you need to stay in and wait till the morning to see CAMS, and then CAMS come round and they're like, yeah, they're no risk. I think your judgment is questioned in that moment. When you go back to talking about knowing your kids, but also my professional background as well, you know, I'm a qualified mental health nurse, and if I've brought my child to you, like being dismissed as nothing, and then incidents escalate, like you dismissed when I told you that there was a clear risk there, and then the wait times around health, you know, we're not naive to children having undiagnosed conditions, and we're trying to support and advocate for them to receive those assessments so that they can diagnosis to get the support that they need to fulfill the placement and progress. And it just takes so long, and I know that that's the case on a whole, but it's a real barrier in these kind of settings. Like, for example, I had a child, the day he arrived, I knew straight away that he had an undiagnosed learning disability. We aren't an LD setting, we are an EBD setting, and I advocated for the whole 18 months that he was with me for him to receive a diagnosis, to put him in vulnerable positions of having to attend appointments for assessments, which I knew he wouldn't be able to manage, which then led to safeguarding and assaults and things like that. And it was just such a long process. 18 months he had to wait to finally move to a LD setting. And if he hadn't been in that setting originally, he made progress with us, but what progress would he have made? Like, do you know what I mean? He made progress with us, but would it have been like significant? exceptional progress in that kind of setting where staff are trained to meet the needs. Even when it comes to restraints, there's different level of restraint, that, you know, that those things weren't effective in this home because we're not a home for that. So I think that is a really big barrier for us as a whole with health.
Having gone through that, Kirsty, would you do anything different now in that 18 months? Would you have changed any of that process?
Absolutely not. It was draining, exhaustive, but in the end he left here with working diagnosis and an actual diagnosis. And he turned 15 with me and then 16 with me, and had someone advocated for him like that. He'd been in an SEN school, so I don't understand why it took for him to come to me to get to that point. There's a lot of grey areas around that, but had someone had fought and advocated and, you know, escalated the way I did years ago, he wouldn't even be there. And I think that's the difficult bit for me, you know, in my role. Why does it take for them to get here for someone to actually fight for them? Because some children have been in care for years, you know, some of them are new to care. That's, you know, they've gone under the radar from being let down by schools or health or whatever that looks like. But why does it take for them to come to a place like here for someone to actually fight for them?
No, I completely agree. I completely agree, because it is a collective effort, isn't it? You know, safeguarding it is all of these, like we're saying, these agencies that we can see coming together. You know, good communication is going to save lives and have better outcomes. Poor communication is potentially going to cost lives, where you've got your serious case reviews and then have that inconsistency for that young person. So it really does make that big difference. And you know, you've clearly made such a difference to that young person's life in that 18 months. Yes, it didn't happen as quick as you wanted it to, but actually, you know, it's probably happened a lot quicker than what it would have done having him not been with you. Do you know what I mean? So it's to sort of take that away, isn't it? That, you know, you have made that now difference to their life, sort of thing. And it is a legal duty what you did. You know, we have that legal duty to do that.
And with the multi-agency working, if there's a break in the chain, and I say a lot because obviously we're all linked together, you can see everyone sitting around that table in that picture. If there's just one break in the chain, it can affect the whole outcome. So, you know, if a parent's not on board or the social worker's not communicating effectively, it literally upsets the whole apple cart. It prevents everyone from being able to do what they need to do, to be honest. So you've got to be aligned to the same vision and the same outcomes. And that's where sometimes you do have to have the challenging conversations and put the voice of the child before everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, just sort of moving on, this is why this is so important that we're able to reflect. You know, reflection is so essential in safeguarding, especially after you've had sort of a difficult case like that. You know, it's how I think we stay equally, you know, accountable. It's how we stay compassionate and how we continually look to improve, you know, what we do. And again, we form part of that in sort of our supervision, team briefs, and also any sort of personal journaling. And I think you can only see how sort of things like Victoria Clambier, you know, how, you know, the reflection on that led to such a big improvement in terms of frameworks, legislation, etc. So why is it important that we have reflection? Well, safeguarding is emotionally complex. You know, it's high stakes, isn't it? You know, mistakes, near misses, or difficult cases can happen. And reflection then through that ensures professionals as such as we learn and we improve. And I think one thing to really sort of note, reflection is not and never about blame, but it is about growth and sort of accountability. I think it helps us and improves to responses to children and families. It sort of strengthens our own resilience and reduces burnout. But I think equally it builds a culture of sort of honesty and continuous improvement as well. Now, in terms of reflective practice, do you guys use like the Gibbs model or the Kolb cycle, or do you have any kind of models that you use within your sort of reflective practice in supervisions?
Generally, the Gibbs model for us.
Gibbs model.
Yeah. And do you both find it good? Do you both find it that it does what it needs to do?
I think sometimes some people need a bit more encouragement. So yeah, you've got your standard model.
Yeah.
Not telling them what to say, but
Mhm.
using that professional curiosity and trying to alternate their thinking. Like, have you considered this? What about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but when that happened, did you think that you could have done this, or what do you think that you could have done differently in that situation? Thinking, like,
Yeah.
sitting there and reflecting on it now. I think that like you can expand on the basic model, and some people do need
Prompts.
prompts, a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it is hard, isn't it? Sometimes some people do feel uncomfortable using, reflection and looking back on ourselves, and especially if there is some accountability that needs to be held and any sort of lessons learned. So yeah, we have to sort of gently sort of prompt, don't we, and just sort of poke a little bit to get that essence of reflection and sort of learning.
And I think the skill definitely comes with experience. It just comes as second nature now, like being in the role for so long. But I think that if you're quite new to role and someone's, you're having a supervision and whatever, and someone's asking you to reflect on your practice, some people take it personal, and it's
Yeah.
not. No one's saying that you've done anything wrong, but every day is a learning day. Every day is a day for development. What could you have done differently? Think outside the box for that young person or for yourself, whatever the situation is. What could we do differently? What have you learned from that? Is there anything that we can put in place to prevent it happening again, or to support the child through that? And it definitely comes with experience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, these sort of essence of reflection, and when we need to get people talking and get those sort of open discussions happening, are things like after a safeguarding disclosure, potentially after a referral, considering how it was handled, potentially following a team debrief on a sort of serious case. We know, well, we've already highlighted when you get that sort of feeling when something just doesn't feel right, even if no referral was made, reflection, I think, around those feelings, again, for me, were really sort of crucial. And I think it's as well sort of supervisions, when you've just kind of got that one-to-one time. I think, again, other maybe practical ways of reflection, I don't know whether you guys use them, but things like personal logs and journaling, getting your sort of staff and even yourself to write down sort of how you feel, and maybe some peer support as well. These can kind of sort of help support. So I think sort of when we think about this, that because there is actually a safeguarding link, isn't there, within this? Reflective practice, I think, helps to highlight that sense of accountability, like we've said, compassionate, processing feelings so they don't block empathy, consistency, sort of that application and applying that. Because genuinely, even throughout my whole time, I always said, reflection is not optional. It is part of our safeguarding professionalism. We have to kind of sit with it. As uncomfortable as it is, we have to sit with that process because it is part of of what we do, in our roles and our sort of professionalism. It comes from a place of strength, so it strengthens both practice, so you get better outcomes for young people and children, but equally resilience as well. You've got better well-being then for your staff. And I think for us, I always used to ask, how did I make a difference with that, or how could I make it better next time? And sometimes, again, just kind of sitting and sort of asking ourselves those kind of questions. Did I let my personal biases or assumptions influence kind of my view? Did I listen actively and sort of without judgment? Do you guys have particular prompts to help support reflective practice that you've kind of learned over the years to engage, to really get them sort of thinking?
It's about asking the question, yeah. Just about asking the question, what would you what could you have done different? Basically, I think it's the one thing to let the staff member think for themselves instead of actually giving them the answer to say this is what you could have done. I think that's one thing that is very important to think about when it comes to reflection. That what could you have done different? What do you think we could have done different? Does that make sense? What have we learned from this now? So I tend to use that more when it comes to reflection. Obviously, I don't want to give them the answer. It's just about letting them think by themselves. At this point, it's that more important reflection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Absolutely.
Kirsty. Sorry.
I think that one of the things that, so when I get newer staff in to the team, I like to do reflective practice as a whole.
Mhm.
So I'll do it in team meetings so they're aware of that this is like a safe space. This is where we reflect on things as a whole. Everyone can have an input to it. We come up with new ideas. We come up with things that weren't effective and we might not use that again before we discuss it in supervision.
Mhm.
Because I think, like, going back to some people can feel offended by it, like you're questioning their practice. Whereas if I was questioning your practice, it'd be a very different conversation. But do you know what I mean? So if they've done it in a group setting, they're kind of used to that format, and hopefully that reduces them taking it personal. I think some people still do, because obviously, like I said, it comes with experience, and you know, I've probably took it personal before when I've had to do it years ago. So that's something that I do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it's knowing, isn't it? And that comes with experience. I think what's going to help and support, and we can take, what we know could have helped us when we first started out, and bringing essence of sort of that in. But looking at compassion, what does this sort of look like in safeguarding work? Well, compassion is more than just kindness, isn't it? It's an active choice to kind of listen, understand, and sort of act, I think, in ways that promote safety. For me, compassion is not weakness. It's about how we show children and sort of vulnerable adults that they matter, and that this, that it keeps them safe, basically. And I think there's the strong link there to the sort of trauma-informed practice as well, compassion, because it helps to regulate the nervous system, doesn't it, when we see that, of children who sort of may feel unsafe or mistrustful. If they've been distressed, they've got anger, they're withdrawn. Compassion impacts outcomes, I believe anyway. Children are more likely to sort of disclose, to engage, to sort of feel safe when supported with sort of empathy. And I guess, that really sort of comes out. What do you think compassion looks like for you in a crisis? How do you show that sense of compassion in a crisis to that young person?
I think remaining calm, soft, gentle tone, not aggression, not aggression, but like sometimes if you're shouting or raising your voice, it can come across as quite aggressive to them. Offering that nurture and the physical touch. A lot of children, obviously your children, but a lot of children respond really well to physical touch. And if you don't get the reaction that you generally get, then that's when you take a step back. But I think you definitely need to be showing that level of affection and nurture for them. I read one of the incident reports for one of my children the other day, and she'd got on the floor and she was in like the fetal position and she was just crying. And then what followed after that is the staff member got on the floor next to her and literally just hugged her. And that is the compassion, that is the nurture, that is the understanding. That's a perfect example of how the staff here would deliver that for the young people. It's really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really, really is. Ola, how do you care for yourself when compassion sort of fatigue sets in for you guys?
For myself, or how to support the children? Sorry.
For yourself.
For myself.
We have to understand, we have to be compassionate for ourselves.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I'm not gonna say I'm like a macho man. I don't think about myself. Obviously, I do think about myself, and at all times, I think I tend to kind of take into account about what the children, their background at all times. what they've been through. And then if any child is in crisis, how I'm going to be able to support that child. Does that make sense? Taking into consideration their background. And just like what Kirsty have said in terms of supporting the children, active listening, show a lot of empathy as well. And then for myself, I mean, it's just to came to like reflect, have I done the best for this child? Is there anything I could do different? Does that make sense? There's anything I could do different for this child? So that's how I kind of reflect and then hear from other people's opinion, and taking that into consideration. And then if I need to have any kind of blow up, anything, I speak to my manager and discuss any other concerns I have. That's how I tend to manage myself. But I'm more, I kind of keep myself to myself, like kind of like internalize it or digest it or kind of keep it between myself, and be able to kind of support the children more. Because that's just me. That's how it works for me. I'm different. So that's just it.
Yeah, and I get that, and I see that, but equally, you know, within our profession, we can't pour from an empty cup. So do you know what I mean? There is that sense of we do have to sometimes take that time out and look after ourselves, and we do that by holidays and by having our days off. But in those moments, in crisis, etc., it's just sometimes checking in with ourselves and saying, okay, I just need to take myself off for 10 sort of minutes. You know, I need to maybe go home tonight, and I'm just using this as an example, have a long bath or have a, you know, whatever you have to do almost to look after yourself, you know, that also has to form part of a priority, because, you know, that analogy in terms of, you know, when you're on a plane, you've got to put on your mask before you put on anybody else's mask, because what good are you to them if you can't breathe? You know, so it's always checking in and making sure, you know, that we are looking after ourselves as well. And then you've got, safeguarding demands professional honesty, even when it is uncomfortable. So it is about, you know, within that safeguarding practice, as hard as it is difficult and difficult sometimes, it's, you know, reporting concerns truthfully and without any omission, you know, admit when we have made errors, absolutely, and then to look at sort of challenging any sort of unsafe or unethical behaviour. I think, you know, that in integrity, you know, it does build trust with children. You know, they may not say it initially, or tell you, but I think over time, they do sort of see it. What, again, a question to you both, what do you think helps you act with integrity?
Really.
I would be thinking around, for me, it's more around my sort of personal values, but what do you guys think help?
I think that I am very open and honest with the young people, to be honest. I don't sugarcoat. If there's something that they need to be aware of, or there's going to be an outcome that they're not necessarily going to like, I will be completely open and transparent about it. Because there's a lot of, they're not naive to the fact that there's a lot of professionals that sit around talking about them, and who's actually telling them the truth. And that it takes time for them to receive that and understand that you are being open and honest. But I think that when there's, say, an incident after that, and then whatever happens is what you've said is going to happen, and you've been open and transparent, then it's they're not happy about it, but they thought, Kirsty told me that this was going to happen, and now it's happened. And I think that they've had such negative relationships throughout their lives. That's the bare minimum that I can offer, to be honest, to try and build that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Ola?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like what Kirsty said in terms of not sugarcoating any discussion with the children, be open and honest at all times. See it how it is, for them to understand that you've been straight and narrow with them, basically. So I don't sugarcoat anything, just tell them what's going on about any concerns. And like my young person here now, we're talking about school and then the delays around this at school. Even if I know that sometimes she might think, oh, we're not doing the best for her. However, the delay actually comes from the parents. But we have to be open and honest and tell the child to say, you know what, it's not to do with Stafford Road. We are doing our best, but your mom has been a bit slow. It's not, she hasn't done it, she hasn't done it. Just be open and honest. Not to think that we are a bad chap here. We have to let the children know that this is what is happening. So just be open and honest at all times. And don't give fake promises. What you're going to do is what you're going to do.
Yeah,
That's just
yeah.
it. So because as soon as you say something else and then it doesn't happen, and then your children doesn't believe you anymore. So I just give it straight. What I'm going to do about it. This is what's going to happen with anything about maintenance. Like now the lounge has been locked. I don't have to lie to the children that the lounge has been locked. There's a reason why the lounge has been, and now they're talking about it, but I have to tell them we are doing our best. This is when it's going to happen. But at the moment, I haven't got a date. Just be open and honest at all times, so they will know this is what you stand for. That's the way I look at it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think integrity as well in sort of a safeguarding culture, it is that, well, it's a culture of honesty, isn't it? And I think with all of that, it ensures as well that the young people and the staff, they feel safe to admit if anything then has happened or has gone wrong, or that mistakes have been made, because you're a leader, you're sort of playing a key role, aren't you, in modeling integrity. So it is about admitting errors, acting quickly on sort of concerns and things like that. Your values, what do they mean to you? Supporting colleagues to, in terms of for each other to kind of speak up. And equally, I think, that culture of honesty, when we think about that sense of integrity, it's about children and families' experiences, isn't it? That sense of openness and fairness, that we want to promote, we want to, we have to have that, I think, within our sort of settings. So I think for me, honesty and integrity really are sort of foundation. They are the foundation of sort of safeguarding. It's what helps us to build all of these relationships. They help to protect children, protect staff, and build sort of safe, transparent cultures as well, because that safeguarding culture, we are the role models, we are the leaders of that, and it has to start at the top. And I think it's about asking sometimes ourselves, if we came under scrutiny, which I know, again, working in residential, we do a lot, at a sort of safeguarding review or any sort of inspection. It's about asking, would I be confident I acted with honesty and integrity? Because that's what's going to come up in any court of law. Yes, they're going to be looking at the facts, but where did that sort of come from? And I want to know that I acted with the best integrity if I'm ever sort of pulled in a court of law. And that's when it goes back to your reporting, your recording. It's so important because it's defensible. It's what makes your role then defensible. You can't defend a colleague or defend yourself if you don't have the evidence backed up. And this is, again, why it's so important, that sense of reporting and recording and making sure it's accurate. It has to be defensible in a court of law. And this is what I used to say to my staff: I can't defend you if it's not defensible. So it's about making sure everything is done with honesty, with integrity, and that it's accurate, all our reporting, all our recording, because at any point we could be called into a court of law. That we are working with some of the most vulnerable young people, sort of throughout the UK and in the system. So it for me, it's really kind of, to embed that sense of honesty, integrity, and defensibility. Because we can't protect staff or young people if we don't have that, and we have to be that role model, sort of that as well. We are just coming towards an end, because we did start a little bit later. We might just overrun by 5 minutes or so. Is that okay for you both?
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, we've only got a couple of slides, but in terms of confidentiality and sort of boundaries as well, there's a line between caring, I think, and over-involvement, and it's about thinking, re-establishing boundaries sometimes. Do you guys feel you've ever been in a position or place where you've had to re-establish a boundary? And what has that sort of looked like for you? Maybe when you first started out.
I don't think so.
I don't think I've actually not forthcoming in terms of sharing information that needs to be known. Does that make sense now? So I've not been putting this. Yeah.
Have you had to support then a member of staff re-establish a boundary between them and the young person?
Yeah, I've supported that. I think that professional boundaries, I think one that I can reflect on is being heavily involved in incidents because of the level of support required. even though I was voicing to, you know, my management, this placement's no longer suitable. I think it's really easy to lose oversight when you are actively involved in a high number of incidents in the home. You can't have that, not separation, because you're never separated from your home, but you know, like when there's incidents and you're in them, you are like in it, you're in the whole situation. These incidents had been going on for a long period of time. We were at a point of notice, and it was almost daily. And for my professional boundaries and my personal boundaries, that limited me in my role then, because I'm basically a glorified RCW, and I can't maintain like my role in this, because it's then having to go to my manager and her oversight, and it just gets messy. So that's probably one of mine that, and it hasn't sat right with me, and I've reflected on that and I've discussed it with my new line manager, but I was in a position where safeguarding is, you know, top priority, and I had to keep everyone in the house safe, but it was something that I didn't want to. It's not that I don't want to be involved in incidents, but I don't want my ability or my job to be affected by it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It wasn't just an isolated one, like it had gone on for weeks, and I feel like it impaired my oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's been reflection on that, and I think that's what's important, isn't it? You know, that's now sort of things have changed, and you've been able to put that in place, and and sort of question that a little bit.
And I think when you're in that position as well, like your judgment can become emotive, and you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Does that, like, I don't know if that makes sense, but for me it makes sense. Like you can be like emotionally driven because you're in it, rather than looking at it from the outside in. Even like I always look for that level of support to my staff anyway, and make sure that they, you know, they're having their reflection and they're given space and ensuring their well-being. But I think like even your responses to emails, you are reflecting, you are very, very emotionally led in that moment.
Yeah, it's almost like something's been switched off, hasn't it? And our thinking brain and rational brain and emotional brain, they're just not kind of working together. It's all very, like you said, emotive. It's all emotional sort of driven, and within our roles, we need them all to be switched on. We have to come from that thinking, that rational and emotional, because without that, we wouldn't be doing this job. You know what I mean? We are invested. But it's almost like, I completely get it. We need everything to sort of be switched on. Definitely. What about yourself, Ola?
No, nothing. I mean, if there's any kind of concerns, I will definitely want the staff member to bring any safeguarding concern to myself to see how we can kind of support it. And if there's anything that I feel that I need to share with my regional manager, I will share it with them. Basically, that's how I tend to do things. But if it's something that I can manage within myself, I will be able to manage it and support the staff, and then put plans in place to support the children if they need to kind of liaise with external bodies, and I'll be able to do that as well. And if there's anything out of the ordinary that I think I need support for in terms of how the staff have been managing safeguarding concern, or if it's something above my capability, then I'll be able to liaise with my regional manager to see how we can come together to support the home. That's just the way I look at things. And then one thing that I get myself drawn into, I don't know if it's relatable. I get myself, I think I've learned from that, try to avoid not getting involved in incidents. But one thing about it is that I don't know how I'm going to kind of be in the office and I can hear the commotion going on outside. I don't know how to do it. I just don't know how to do it, because I need to protect the staff member. I can't sit down in the office and I can hear a staff member being bashed and stuff. Obviously, the children we have now, they don't do all the kind of behaviors. But previously, we have a situation whereby I got myself drawn into it. Then I will be kind of, I'll get something made against myself. Then I'll be taken out of the home. It has happened 1 or twice whereby a child has said something, but I've been told, I don't get involved, but I don't know how to do it, because I'm not going to sit down there because I'm just a human being as well, like those guys. Not because they're just staff members, then I'll let them get better because I don't want to get myself into it or get investigated. No. I'll get myself into it as support, because I have to be able to open an honest with the staff member to know that I'm not just a decorative manager. I'm here to support. I'm being involved together. That is just the way I manage, and it has happened twice. But that won't stop me from getting involved. If I need to get involved as a manager, I will get involved to support the staff. Not I'm trying to disempower the staff, but if it's gone above and beyond, and staff have been talking about being sick because of being hurt by children and stuff like that, I'll get myself involved. I support them. If I have to do physical intervention, I will do it. And then that could blow back when my child say, you have done this to me. Then I'll be open and honest. I will send it to the regional manager. If they want to take it forward, they will take it forward. Does that make sense? That's how I tend to do my thing. But I think maybe just thinking now, maybe take a step backward, but I'm not sure. When I get there, I'll think. But I'm just that kind of person.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, it's difficult in any situation like that, because you're there to protect the children, but equally you know, you're a role model to protect the staff as well, aren't you? And you don't want nobody to get hurt. And I think but I think sometimes, you know, on a more different sort of note, when we think about boundaries as well, I mean, definitely I've had dealings with back in the day, you know, especially new staff coming in or inexperienced, they want to become friends with the children. Instead of that professional, and sometimes you have to help them with those type of boundaries. I've definitely supported a lot of staff with that level of professionalism and not crossing over between, yes, you want to get to know them, absolutely, but there's a line between what looks like a friendship and a professional relationship. And I think, you know, we have to be very careful. They have to know that, yes, you are there to look after and protect them to one extent, but yeah, you can quite easily, when you're new, inexperienced, sort of slip into, and then things start to be shared, don't they? Personal information, because you've gone into that friend, aunt, uncle, sistery type role, where then, you know, we start to overshare sometimes with our young people. And again, that's something I remember having to sort of manage, that sense of oversharing. Sometimes as well, gifts, accepting and receiving gifts, you know, sometimes they used to come in thick and fast, you know, particular times of the year, Christmas, when you take the kids out and they've got a bit of spending money, that's different. But again, if they're new and experienced and they're kind of receiving all these gifts, it can look like, okay, well, what are they trying to get out of you that they're not going to get out of me? Hence why you're getting all the gifts, you know. So just kind of managing expectations around that. And I've definitely worked with somewhere. And again, I think this is something we do have to manage, where we tend to find young people gravitate to one or two people, don't they? You're not going to be friends, and we know that as adults. We don't get on with everybody, but we have to still be professional within our roles. But for young people, they do tend to hold on, and you can find either new and inexperienced staff, they may start to treat some children more favorably, or they'll treat them different because they have a stronger bond. And I think, you know, again, having to work around that. I don't know whether you guys have had any experience in any of them, but they're definitely ones that I remember having to sort of support, because I remember being in that vulnerable place when I started out over 25 years ago. I had to kind of check in with myself, or should I have just said that? What did I just say? And it's that constant, isn't it? Just making sure we're not dropping into a different kind of role.
Yeah, and I think that's more common with not being not judgmental, but a lot of the younger staff, they're very naive to.
Yeah.
And it's, again, everything comes with experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. But these are the things, knowing this, I think, as DSLs and role modeling, we can form part of that sort of training, can't we? Because again, we know our kids. In one setting, it's going to look different from yours, Kirsty, than it probably is to Ollie's. So it's about, when we're doing that induction training, okay, well, we know this particular young person likes to latch on because they think they're going to maybe get extra little bits, or, you know, more privileges. It's just about being aware, isn't it? And it's us having that knowledge can sort of help any sort of new sort of staff come in. And then, yeah, just helping them to basically re-establish boundaries and sort of what that basically looks like. And around confidentiality as well. I mean, obviously, we know it's not about keeping secrets. It is about sharing. But it's about, for me, it's always been about sharing the right information with the right people. It's like that need to know basis. Always very conscious about too many people and you know, information and gossip and things like that. So I was very kind of, held on that sense of confidentiality. How do you guys sort of manage it within your house? that sense of a need to know, sharing information?
I think it can be difficult because general safeguarding, you know, the general consensus need to know basis, not everyone needs to know. But if there's a concern that could potentially affect future risk, or staff need to be vigilant about them leaving the house and things like that, you do have to share the information. And if it's going to affect the young person's presentation, they need to be aware of it. I think that it's, although you're not supposed to like digress all the personal information, we have so much information about the children before they even come to us that as a team, to be able to best support the children, the whole team needs to be aware. If there's say it's a safeguarding about a particular staff member, then obviously that, unless there's like a risk assessment in place around managing that staff member, then you wouldn't generally share that with the whole team, even though the young person probably would anyway. It's just circumstantial, isn't it, to be honest?
Yeah. How do you kind of manage then? Do you know when you've got all your information in front of you like we used to, and you know you're sharing that information? How do you stop any sort of prejudgment? Ola, I'll sort of come to you. How do you, with your staff, because you've got all this information? Because what I used to say is, yeah, absolutely read it, because there's some aspects of that we really need to know, and you guys need to know to protect yourselves. But in terms of getting to know that person, because these reports have come from many different people that have got different values, different belief systems, etc., judgments, biases, etc., and it's all kind of all encapsulated. How then do you allow relationships to build organically, like stop any prejudgment when you have these kind of packs come in?
Especially if it comes regarding, let's say, regarding a staff member or the children. But if it's about the children, let's say we have a lot of information about the child that is being disclosed to us from other professionals. And obviously, like I said to you last week, there's some basic information that we tend to have, like a small sheet about a child, not to devote all the information to the new staff member. Does that make sense? Eventually, they'll get to know, obviously, but we tend to use that to see like a snapshot of a child. Obviously, we have the full details in the folders. We tend to use that. But however, if the information needs to be shared by everyone needs to know within the staff team, we just have to have the conversation in the team meeting to say these are the informations and stuff like that. And then we need to let the staff know who and when this information can be shared. However, on the flip side, if it's about a staff member, that I do have a staff member on like whereby the DBS need to be referred and stuff like that, and then we tend to, because of the history, we still have to be able to kind of put a plan in place to be able to employ the staff member. However, those information not need to be shared with the rest of the team. Does that make sense now? But I need to have a particular folder whereby we keep those informations inside, whereby it's not being exposed to other staff member, where they can use that information against that person. Does that make sense now? So that's how I tend to manage that situation. So it's just about, don't divulge information that need to be divulged to everyone. It's about need to know basis. And then if there's anything that needs to be kept confidential, and then you keep that as well, you don't share with anybody. Even if someone called to say they are the GP of so and so and so, confirm who the person is and confirm with myself or other managers or anyone above myself, can I share this information? It's good to actually confirm, not just divulge information about a child or somebody to anybody that calls. So I tend to make that understanding to the staff, not just divulge information about a child because someone said they are the police or calling from so and so and so. Confirm who they are and then ask me questions before we can share information. So that's how I tend to kind of manage that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about yourself, Kirsty?
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
Just kind of in terms how you sort of manage that prejudgment. You know, you've got all your packs, you've got all your information in. How do you allow sort of relationships to organically grow within the house, rather than, you know, you've got all this information, or this child's going to be this, that's what it's going to look like, we need to do this. How do you allow it sort of organically grow? How do you stop that judgment?
As part of the role of the registered manager, the voice of the child is the voice of the child, and until whatever investigation has took place, then to say that this has happened or this hasn't happened, then that is what I will listen to. Obviously the support's there for staff here from myself and other staff members, but it's also there, like the wellbeing team, they've got an app and things like that for them if they don't feel supported in the house. Some staff, they are suspended, etc., so they don't have the physical support. They're not allowed to speak to anybody in the team other than their allocated person. I think that sharing information around potential risks doesn't mean that you need to disclose the whole ins and outs. So like I said earlier about being circumstantial, sharing only what is needed to know to ensure the safety of like the staff and the children. I think there's always going to be judgmental people, and you can't control everybody, but it's how you address it if that situation arises, and you have to manage that. And I think that's from other children within the home, the child themselves, whether they're judging themselves and taking that on, but also with staff. We can try and control every situation, and like you said, how do you support that in your home? You can try and control and put measures in place for everything, but there's 9 times out of 10 somewhere down the line there's going to be an incident of that nature, and it's how you support and manage that within your home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good sort of way, managing it. It's very individualized, isn't it? And especially even with staff and their response and the young people. So manage it in a more of an individualized sort of context, definitely. I think pressures in safeguarding. This is our last slide before we come into an end. So pressures in safeguarding, it can be emotionally, mentally demanding, as we've sort of said. So it is about how we then can create that space for our honest discussion. We have to think about aspects of safeguarding that, that are challenging. How do we look after ourselves, and how do we then support and know what support is available sort of within our organisation? And I think these are the just type of questions that we need to be bringing in just to make sure that we are just fully aware and supported in terms of looking after ourselves, what we do, supporting our staff, but equally getting the best out of our young people as well. So it's what good support looks like, both formal, you've got your supervision, and then informal, things like your peer check-ins. It's about, seeking support. It's around resilience and self-awareness, and then providing, signposting to sort of any sort of mental health resources, that we do sort of have. Again, your CPD and log learning as well. It's about making sure that we're evidencing it, that reflective aspect, evaluate the impact of that and revisit that. What did I learn? How then has my practice changed, and what do I still need to do to sort of continue developing sort of within that? Okay, so we have talked over legislation and policy in practice, and then some of our safeguarding responsibilities within the organisation. Just very briefly, what are sort of 2 things that you've really sort of picked up, taken away from today? Like I said, I know a lot of it will probably have been a refresher for you too, being registered managers. But what's sort of two things that's really sort of stood out for you? Kirsty, I'll come to you first.
I think that having this session together with Ola, we're very much aligned and supportive of each other around safeguarding. I think it's really important that you have. Me and Ola have had difficulties with management. There's been a lot of changes for me and Ola, as in higher management, and having that connection with another manager who's going through similar to you is really important. And just talking today has made me think about that, because we do support each other actually really well. And I think that another thing that I've taken away, which I always take away, but it never changes, is what you were saying about the compassion fatigue. And I think that as a registered manager, it's always going to be there regardless. And when it comes to what you do to manage that, it's it can be really difficult, especially if, like I said before, you don't have the supportive management and you do feel quite isolated and against it. Because how are you supposed to take that time if there's nobody there who's going to mop it up if you're not there? Does that make sense? It's really difficult, and I think there's a lot of pressure on registered managers that isn't really considered by some people, and how much they actually take on in their role. Like, and it's not just the children, is it? You know, some of the staff are harder to support than the children. It's as a whole, and then you get the abuse from parents, and then you get from the social workers. You know, there's a lot, and I think that if you don't have the support around you, it can be very isolating and difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Ola, what about yourself?
I think what I've learned and take home is about those difficulties that you found around multi-agency in terms of having those informations from the social worker. The delays around sharing of information can actually put the children in more safeguarding concerns. And like I've mentioned before, with the social worker not coming forward information, or the police trying to have an agreement around the boundaries that have been put in place around the child. I think about taking that into consideration, I think I've learned one or two things around that, which I've never learned before, about the difficulties, and also in terms of how to show compassion around managing disclosures, or if a child has been struggling, how are you going to support them? And also thinking about yourself personally as well, how you're going to manage yourself when things are hard, whereby having a take maybe like you mentioned, like annual leave, or step out of the situation to have a rethink and reflect, and then probably go back in there to support the child. And I think those are the things I've taken. I think I mentioned before that I don't think about myself too much. Now listening to yourself, I think is actually good, about thinking about yourself, because sometimes this might be too much. There's a lot of things going around, and then you want to kind of manage the whole situation at the same time. But about having a step away, think, refresh. I think that's another big takeaway, which I've learned, which I'm going to try to incorporate moving forward, because I never did that before.
Right,
Trust me.
I will do regular check-ins then to see how you're getting on. Right, that's fantastic, guys. I think you have, before we go into assignments, I now know you've completed, I think both of you, haven't you, module 1 assignment?
Yeah, I just need to do the other little bits.
Yeah, so it's around your guided learning and your wider learning. I think same for you, Ola, as well. So just a case of listening, looking on Bud, watching the videos, and then equally listening to the playbacks as well to complete your wider and your guided. But I will catch you up with that, Ola, when we speak next week.
Okay.
When we come together. But in terms of, I know when we were with you, Ola, you've completed your assignment. Kirsty, you've done yours. So I don't need to go into sort of the assignment aspect of things. But in terms of your spreadsheets that were sent out, and again, Ola, if you're not sure, we'll do this next week. But just make sure, Kirsty, that you log your time today into Bud for your lecture attendance.
Okay.
And I will stop recording at that point.